Breaking news tonight, if you haven't heard, former First Lady Barbara Bush has passed. She was 92. The Bush family just released a statement. And I'm going to have that for you right now. It says, I'm going to get to that, her son and former Florida governor, also former presidential candidate Jeb Bush, released this statement that reads, Columba and I join every member of the Bush family in offering our sincere gratitude for the outpouring of love and support for my mom in recent days and throughout her remarkable life. I'm exceptionally privileged to be the son of George Bush and the exceptionally gracious, gregarious, fun, funny, loving, tough, smart, graceful woman who was the force of nature known as Barbara Bush. Thank you for your prayers, and we look forward to celebrating and honoring her life and contributions to our family and great nation in the coming days. Joining me now by phone, former White House press secretary for George W. Bush, Dana Perino. Dana, how sad is this night? This has to be very tough for you.
It is sad, though. I think about her and the life of great consequence that she led, and she was one of such great dignity that she would know that we were sad, but she would also want us to celebrate all the amazing things that she did in her life. Though she was humble about those accomplishments, there's no doubt that she made an incredible impact, not just on America, but on the world.
Absolutely.
But really, first and foremost, the most important thing to her was her family. I feel most sad for them tonight. I'm closest to George W. Bush, and I know how much he loved his mother. They had a fun sort of running joke in the family. I don't know if you know this, Kennedy, but the family had a nickname for her. They called her Frank because she was so frank in her comments. And George W. Bush used to say, I got my daddy's eyes and my mama's mouth.
Well, that's fantastic, and it served him well as a two-term president and two-term governor of Texas and successful businessman. So, I was overwhelmed at the number, $1 billion. That's how much money that she and George H.W. Bush have raised for charity over their lifetimes. And, we've heard about literacy, but also AIDS advocacy, and she also raised a lot of money for homelessness. And, and people, it seems, were drawn to her. She had such a magnetic personality. And even though she was frank and she was tough and she was protective, it seemed to be the best side of her character.
It certainly spurred a lot of other charity as well. Years ago, I think it was 2010, I hosted a Minute Mentoring event in Houston, and I invited her to be the kickoff, to give the remarks. And she wrote back and said, well, why would you want me? I've never earned a paycheck in my life. And it's true that in all the work that she did, she didn't get a paycheck. She dedicated all of that to charity, all the books, all the work, and she really took that on as her responsibility. And I would add one thing, Kennedy, about her literacy program. It is very rigorous. It is actually measured, and they get really great results. And so one of the things I know that just last year when I spoke to her that they were disappointed in is that adult literacy, we keep having the same number of people, partly because of immigration, of adults unable to read, and how devastating that was for their lives. So she has redoubled efforts. So a lot of what you're talking about in terms of all the charity work that they did, it wasn't like throwing money away. They demanded performance, which is something that, the government doesn't always do.
No, exactly. And that's why I was so moved when Brett talked about in the package you saw at the top of the show that she wanted a cause, something that could make the biggest impact with the least amount of requirement from the government, which I thought was really beautiful. Now, what kind of interaction did you have with her in the White House? Was she worried for her son? Because obviously it's very different having a son in the White House versus a husband.
Actually, 43 would talk about that in that, of course, as the president and the first lady, when you're the president, you expect all the criticism coming your way. When the criticism is directed at your loved one, it hurts a lot more. I would say, actually, Kennedy, that I think the criticism of their son actually affected President George H.W. Bush even more than it did her, or at least she didn't show it as much. And she and the former President 41 were so intertwined in their life in every way. And as I understand it, in the last several days, they spent a lot of time holding hands, and they didn't have many more words that they needed to say to each other. But they have raised such an amazing family. And what I keep saying is that it was a life of great consequence. And also a great leadership quality of hers was that you never wanted to disappoint Barbara Bush.
And where does she stand in contrast to other first ladies? I asked Doug Weed that at the top of the show. He's a presidential historian. But having known her and worked with her son, where do you see her in that rare pantheon?
Well, I feel like every first lady is so unique. And she certainly was. And I know that Hillary Clinton said that Barbara Bush could not have been more gracious to her when she came to get a tour of the White House. And one of the things, I just remember this, that Hillary Clinton said that Barbara Bush, coming off of that horribly difficult loss for the Bush family in that reelection, inviting the Clintons to the White House, Hillary Clinton said that Barbara Bush took her upstairs to the residence and showed her that if you stood in this one corner by the atrium, and if you looked that way, you could see into the Oval Office, and you could keep an eye on your husband there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, of course, I don't mean that in any bad way. I don't anything that happened in the future. But it was to say, here's a way that you can be connected from the East Wing to the West Wing.
Absolutely. And these people, are naturally protective of their spouses, regardless of party. Dana, I want to thank you so much for taking this time. You were one of the very first people I thought about when I heard of her passing, and I know what great fondness and affection you have for the former First Lady.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it was an honor to know her.
That's beautiful. Well said. Thanks, Dana.